and the future is the only thing I'm facing. Yes, I need you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. So, having established my remarkably precocious and very, very early spiritual awakening, I persuade my parents to let me transfer to Catholic school. And in recognition of my new status as a member of the Pope's blessed army of saints, I will, of course, be donning a plaid kilt, because God, after all, is apparently Scottish. And together, these moves place me on the spiritual fast track to actualizing my newfound career goal of becoming a saint. The plan hits a snag. It goes awry, if you will, in the 4th grade. The year is 1971, and my teacher's a nun who bears a frightening resemblance to Jennifer Jones' Nemesis.
Are you pert, indifferent, or only stupid?
Nemesis. In that film, The Song of Bernadette. She lectures us on the U.S. war in Vietnam, and to hear Mother Superior tell it, the U.S. war is a holy war, and communists are coming to invade Washington, D.C.
The nations of the world mobilize their armed might, rushing to defend the Earth against the unknown weapons of the super race from the Red Planet.
They will, of course, head straight for the School of the Little Flower. Machine guns drawn, they're going to line us up in the gymnasium and separate the wheat from the chaff. And I'm like, wait, am I the wheat or the chaff? I have no idea what this chaff is, and it frightens me that I could know myself so little. But those of us who refuse to renounce the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior will die in a hail of machine gun fire. But there's an upside, she tells us, which is this. It's not the body, but the soul that counts. So the true believers will be carried off to heaven, while the reprobates will suffer the flames of eternal hellfire and damnation. Now, in the 4th grade, I may be a little naive, a little jejune perhaps, but I'm not a stupid child, and I catch on to the fact that if I die at 10, there's not going to be a lot of time for character development. I'm not going to be played by Tatum O'Neal.
Money. You took my $200.
Will you quiet down? You hear?
I want my $200.
Or, Jodie Foster.
Well, that's how much you know, Eddie Corbett. Ow!
Or Sissy Spacek.
She wasn't very popular at school. For a while, they lived together in a treehouse. In 1959, they murdered a lot of people.
No, at best, I'm going to be played by that little racist Shirley Temple, who's 40 by now, and a Republican. And I think we can all agree she does not have the dramatic range to play me. If half the class gets blown away by AK-47s, chances are good that I'm just going to be one of this faceless chorus line of child saints, or worse, an extra. It's not exactly the kind of breakout role I'm looking for, if you get what I mean. Part about the body not counting, I'm not buying it. By 1971, I've been watching the U.S. war in Vietnam on the nightly news.
For it seems now more certain than ever that the bloody experience of Vietnam is to end in a stalemate.
And I do see that every night they run these things called body counts. And I have to ask myself, why would they run body counts if the body didn't count? This is even before I've seen a photo of that girl. And she's my own age. And she's naked and screaming and crying and running, all at the same time. And believe me, when I see that kid, it strikes me as pretty clear that when your village is on fire and you're naked and screaming and crying and trying to outrun your own back, the body probably does count. In fact, it probably counts quite a bit. Over dinner, when it's not in front of the TV, my father tells us about fleeing the Nazi invasion of the Netherlands and about, family members in the resistance who are not about to collaborate with the Nazis. For one thing, collaborating would mean offering up my Uncle Pierre as a guinea pig to Dr. Mengele. Uncle Pierre not only suffered brain damage at birth, he had the added bonus of having a twin, my Uncle Paul. And Dr. Mengele loved twins. So he would have been delighted to meet the whole family. So, like the Von Trapp family, minus the singing, those absurd matching outfits and the dog whistle. My father's family also decided to beat feet and head for the border. So it was that I grew up listening to stories in which people are forever dodging mortar fire and trees are forever bursting into flames. And there's my father lying in a ditch, taking cover alongside his 80-year-old grandmother, who I imagine had to be concentrating pretty hard on not dropping dead from a heart attack, because she didn't want that look of terror on her face to be her grandson's final memory of her. And that moment might not seem like much of a Kodak moment.
Do you remember the times of your life?
Kodak film for the times of your life.
But the funny part is that that moment was actually sponsored by Kodak, because Kodak had an excellent business relationship with the Nazis. I mean, they maximized their profits using enslaved labor from concentration camps. Additional corporate sponsorship of Nazi-related traumas and nightmares brought to you by Hugo Boss, the makers of Nazi uniforms, Goose Step in Style. Fanta, the favorite drink of the Third Reich, brought to you by none other than Coca-Cola.
I like to teach the world to sing with me.
IG Farben and its subsidiary Bayer, the makers of Zyklon B, the go-to gas for commandants. BASF, Deutsche Bank, Ford, Volkswagen, General Motors, Porsche, Krupp, Kraft, Chase Morgan, Westinghouse, IBM, ITT. The good news is that my 80-year-old great-grandmother manages to not die of a heart attack in a ditch next to my 13-year-old father. And my uncles, Pierre and Paul, the whole family actually make it to Safe Harbor in England, where 2 of my uncles join the Royal Air Force and become RAF fighter pilots. And the closest I'll ever get to meeting my Uncle Paul is seeing his portrait and his flight cap in my father's study, all that we have to remember him by after his plane goes down over France. My father, who's too young to enlist, finds refuge with his and other families in a London hotel, only to be awakened in the middle of the night when the entire top stories are blown off, reduced to blood-soaked rubble, care of German bombs in a London Blitz. All things considered, a pretty happy ending compared to Anne Frank and her sister Margot and, several millions more who, let's just say, were not welcomed with the same open arms that embraced my father's wealthy Catholic family. Stories about Nazis, death camps, and Dr. Mengele have pretty well convinced me by the 4th grade that the body counts. In fact, it counts quite a bit. And anyone who isn't in touch with that particular reality, even if they're not swinging a ruler at you personally, probably not someone you want as your spiritual advisor, and definitely not your social studies teacher. Later on in my education, I did have some really inspiring feminist nuns as teachers, but I'm pretty sure that they're not going to want a personal shout out from me right now. While this red-baiting nun is nattering on about salvation, I hatch my escape plan. I go home and I tell my parents that I'll be transferring to a Quaker school called Sidwell Friends. And while I have absolutely no idea what the heck a Quaker is, I do happen to know that Julie Nixon, who also lives in Washington, D.C., goes there. And I patiently explain to my parents that if it's good enough for Julie, it's good enough for me. But that argument doesn't carry a lot of water with my parents, who maybe figure all that money is just going to be wasted on Julie Nixon because she's just going to grow up to become a little fascist like her father.
I think it is time in this country to quit making national heroes out of those who steal secrets and publish them in the newspapers.
And anyway, they're not about to shell out $1 million a year for some Tony little prep school, because they can pretty much figure out where the whole thing's headed. From Quaker school to being a straight line to my joining the Hare Krishna, and they are absolutely drawing the line at that haircut. Quaker school's a no-go. And my parents tell me that I've made my bed and I'm just going to have to sleep in it for the next 4 years with the nuns and the priests. Now I'm going to have to rethink my plan. I'm going to have to go underground, get a new identity. So I start wearing my beanie at a jaunty angle like Jean-Paul Sartre, that French guy. And in the 8th grade, they have this thing called confirmation, basically like entering a witness protection program in which you get a new name, the name of a saint who embodies qualities you particularly admire and wish to emulate. Hearing that Jennifer Jones doesn't qualify, I decide to go big and take the name of an apostle, because they're like these A-listers. They're going to have these really primo seats at the right hand of the Father. But there's one big hitch. sister. I mean, there has to be at least one apostle who doesn't end up getting like pinned by darts, crucified upside down, burned at the stake, or like roasted alive on a spit like a deli chicken, because not being tortured to death is definitely a quality I want to emulate. And that's how I end up taking the name John, the only apostle who dies of natural causes. This is before I've even seen a photo of the guy who has like actual Peter Frampton hair. That's true. And I mean, look at those lips. No wonder they made the guy the patron saint of love, right? So I snagged the name John, which in retrospect is probably why like the bishop was giving me like serious side eye. Like maybe he thought I needed reparative therapy to root out my latent lesbian tendencies. Anyway, I managed to make it through this formative experience and graduate the 8th grade. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. This brings us to the part you've all been waiting for. How I accidentally killed my father.
What you want, who you be, what you need, why you talking to me. Don't be quiet, I'm a needle to the weave. Better talk or you'll fall through the seams. Spit it out, what's your play? Think you're slick with your bag, or what are tricks? I'm not fooled by the shape of your lips, just a suit in the shape of a tick. Have you found what you lost? Have you lost what you found? Do you really understand how you sift for a love in the sand? Like a leaf inside the wind, and you go where it tells you to go, but you never wonder why there isn't nothing here at all. It's a game, don't you think? While you're looking at me, you look away. I can stitch every word to your lips, so you'll know just a thing to say to me. Sew it up, close the rip, put a nice little plaque on the slip. I can sew like a Vincent Van Gogh. No one needs ever know, start the show. Have you found what you lost? Have you lost what you found? Do you really understand how you sift for a love in the sand? Like a leaf inside the wind, and you go where it tells you to go, but you never wonder why there isn't nothing here at all.
I find that we are all the same. We all just play a game and